right, welcome back to This Takes the Cake. We're super excited and honored. We have Mr. Jordan here from A Good Day, and we're really excited to dive into all kinds of fun things. I guess let's start with how we actually met. Do you remember? I do.
Believe we, yeah, I was like, I believe we crossed paths at Wedding MBA
We did.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, and I believe, if I remember correctly, I remember. Um, I think either I walked over or you walked over, and you had designed and did all the cool stuff for Party Slate that year. And I
Yep.
remember it was like a 5x7. It was silver and black or something
It
really
was a gold
like
ticket.
gold ticket. Is that what it was? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then you handed me one of your business cards. I was like, oh, this is even cooler. So, and I come from like a website graphic design, background. That's what I majored in. So I think it's really cool when I meet somebody and they have a really cool business card because that's like first impression. Like, oh wow, this is cool quality. That means they do really good work. At least that's first impression. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm very much of the same vein and have invested a good
right.
amount of money in my cards.
Right, I know, right? It's so crazy. Whenever we're getting a new franchise up and running, and then they have to buy their own cards after it. They're like, "Wait, how much are these?" They're like, "We just need like," and I'm like, "Nope, you need these."
Yeah.
So it's too funny. All right, so give us your background in the wedding industry. Like, how did you get started?
I started kind of by like happy accident. Um, I had a business doing some like paper and wood jewelry before this incarnation of a good day.
Okay,
And my brother was getting married, and I mean, I've been obsessed with paper and crafting and art since I was a kid. I did art history in school. I painted, like all those really kind of creative outlets.
right,
And then my brother was getting married, and I offered to do their invitations, just as like I had no inkling of doing it, but it was just like, let me help you out. This looks really cool. They
right,
wanted to do something fun and challenging, and I kind of went crazy on the project. It was amazing.
right.
Um, but I learned to letterpress, foil, laser cut. Like
Oh my gosh,
I did 175 invitations. Um,
that's amazing.
it was a lot.
And was his
And
wedding
then
in Toronto or where was?
yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah, just outside of it. But I was kind of like bit by the bug and then spent 6 months working on a series of like semi-custom suites, which no longer exist. But
Right,
started out in things that were a little bit more templated and then grew into fully custom work pretty quickly.
right. No, that's awesome. No, that's like super cool. And I always love to hear everybody's story of how they got started. And most of the time it's with a passion too. So I think once
Mm.
you started doing, you're like, okay, I love this. I could do this for a living. So it's fun to be creative. And I'm sure when you meet with couples and go through those things, that's super cool to like
Oh yeah.
see what their style is and then to take a twist with you and bring it to life. So no, that's super cool. So we're going to be talking all things design today, obviously all the way from the invitation suite to all the way to the actual event and how it all ties together. Because I mean, the piece that they get from you, especially the invitation, save the date. I mean, those are the first things they're seeing for the wedding.
Hmm.
So sometimes that can make or break if a guest wants to attend, right?
Yes.
I love it because sometimes I've got some like, oh my gosh, I got to be at this wedding. So no, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Or they're like, oh, wow, I have to get a good gift.
Exactly. Too funny. All right, so let's talk about your hand in the design on the client side, like for the invitation versus the vendor side. So let's talk invitations first. All right, tell me like with the background, like when someone comes to you, what is like? Do some people come to you and like, okay, I exactly, want you to do what you envision, or I guess to some people come to you and be like, okay, I want to copy this one. You're probably like, absolutely not.
I mean, yeah, when I was first starting out, you are still finding your voice and figuring out how your design style kind of articulates. And so there was a lot more of references that were being done already. And I think the industry at the time didn't have the language that it does now.
Right.
Now, a lot of my couples are coming to me actually with planners. Um, and then we are working through a design vision together,
Cool.
to make sure that it's matching the overall theme and building on it and telling a more cohesive story. And so I'm usually getting on the ground a little bit earlier in the design process overall, and so we have a way of collaborating that way. And for me, it's really important to talk about, what kind of emotions are we trying to get across. I love to talk to my couples about their interests and hobbies and things that they love, and where do they love to eat, and are there pieces of
Same. Yeah.
architecture or interior design that they love. What does their house look like? Do they collect handbags? Like, any of those things to me
Right.
influence how that design can articulate versus just the simple, our wedding colors are X and Y and we're going to try and match that literally.
Right. And here's our names and the date.
Yeah.
Right. No, totally. So, what's the first stop for someone that comes to you for creating an invitation suite? I mean, do they
uh,
do a phone call or a Zoom or a meeting?
Usually a Zoom.
Okay, cool.
um the pandemic has done wonders in that sense. Actually, like, the virtual calls, I think, have broken down a lot of barriers between me and clients. Typically, I'd have to go, we'd meet for coffee, or I'd go to a workshop, like, you know,
Yeah, of
depending on the
course.
nature of the business. And that doesn't really, it takes you out of your environment. And being able to see couples in their homes or in their workplace or those kind of things allows me to get a glimpse inside their life in a way without them having to tell it to me. And
Right.
so I love that bit because we get to break it down and have that conversation pretty quickly.
Right. No, absolutely. So once they come to you and obviously they kind of talk your vision and things like that, like, and everybody's different, but like there's just some days I'm more creative than others, and then some at random
Hmm.
moments things hit me. Is that the same for you as a designer? And when we're working on, there's just some days I'm like, okay, I'm in the mood. I got to knock this layout out, or whatever. Is it the same concept for you too?
Yeah, there's a bit of like, I got to get out of bed and get started kind of thing. And then
Right.
sometimes I'm like cooking dinner and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Exactly. Yeah.
it
No,
just kind of hits at
it
the most
hits you.
random
Yeah.
time.
Absolutely.
Um, but one of the ways I usually like to spark that is I love to do a lot of research that goes into my design work. And so, like, falling down the rabbit hole of inspiration will automatically kick it off. So if I'm ever stuck, I'm like, okay, let's go open a magazine up. Let's go look at a Vogue runway. Let's go look at something else to just push me along.
Get inspired. No, for sure. No, I get it. Absolutely. Okay, what do you say your favorite element is that you get most excited designing for, or about, certain type of paper or certain full or things way out of the box?
Yeah, I mean, the out of the box work is what gets me really excited. Um, Projects where both myself and the whole team are like, I don't know how we're gonna do this.
A challenging one, would you call it, right?
Yes, yeah, I tend to thrive in those projects just because I love the nature of building things and figuring things out, and
Same,
that
same.
to me makes a much more interesting project for everyone, because then your guests have a piece that they're like, what is this? Like, how is this working?
Right? How
Like,
did they come
what
up
is
with
this
this?
feeling I'm feeling? Like, what, this is made of leather? Like, things like that where the reaction is very unexpected.
Right. What would you say is the coolest like type of it doesn't necessarily have to be an invitation, but like certain like I know you just said leather or something that you've worked at that was like really exciting.
I did a wedding, I don't even know how many years ago. 7 years ago. Um, which was crazy, one of my craziest projects, and it was a custom box made of cork wallpaper, and inside were
Cool.
45 handmade paper flowers, and it popped up with a three-color laser cut foil invitation. Like, it was a lot.
So that
Um,
was one invitation what you just
One
described.
invitation. It was a
Holy
7
moly.
inch by 7 inch box. Like, it was
That
huge.
is cool. And how many did you have to
Uh,
do?
35. It took me 3 months, literally 3 months, to produce them. They're 40 hours a box.
Wow. That's amazing. So where was that wedding? Just like for the vibe that you were just describing.
The couple got married in the forest. They had
Okay.
a family who had five private property, and they cleared out a clearing. It looked like the wedding in Twilight. She
Okay, that's
rode
what
in
I'm
on a
envisioning
horse.
right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
they pumped smoke into the forest, and she came in on a horse. The florist laser cut 300,000 paper butterflies hanging from the trees.
Stop it.
It was insane.
Did you get invited?
I didn't.
Oh, darn.
I saw all the photos. There were 50 vendors on site setting up for 3 days.
Wow. And I'm guessing it was a small wedding, right? I mean, only 35
Yeah, it
boxes.
was
I
like
mean,
40 people, I think, altogether.
yeah. Oh, wow. That's crazy. So asking, obviously, did you get invited? Do you ever get invited whenever you've done
Yes.
somebody's save the date or invitation? They'll invite you as well. That's pretty
Um,
cool.
sometimes I get to be on site too for the setup before, which I love being
Depending
part
on,
of that energy.
yeah,
Making sure that all of my work is, presented in the best way, but just also helping out.
right.
Um, so that collaborative piece I like, especially as a vendor who doesn't typically get to collaborate
Right. Yeah.
more hand in hand with a lot of other
No,
vendors.
for sure. Yeah, and I mean, just from past experience with couples and things like that. I mean, a lot of designers and just with the paper goods, like they never really see anything after they send out all their stuff. They never
Yeah,
really hear or see anything unless they're stalking or they're getting published in a magazine or something. They don't ever really hear from us again. So that's too funny. All right, so let's talk about what else you do. Obviously, anything paper goods, but I mean, the sky's the limit, obviously. So talk us through everything else that you can do as well.
for clients, it honestly it does, as you kind of said, it varies. We can do things like, I mean, I also work on event websites. So if you have something custom you want on that side, I'm a
Okay,
developer
love
as
it,
well. I've
love
been
it.
designing and building websites for like over 20 years. So that kind of plays into the whole experience that your guests can have. I mean, we also do custom gifting. So I make a lot of products in house. We can do things like welcome bags and programs and itineraries, uh, you know,
And then
brochures, menus.
do you design things as well that will actually be printed? Like if it's
Yes.
some type of, I don't know, maybe they have some cool wall for
Yeah, we do a lot of design for like vinyl decals and
yeah.
wraps, and
Okay.
I designed shields for gobos, so like lighting graphics. So then they
Oh.
project it on walls. It's their monogram and
Oh my god,
things
I
like
didn't
that.
realize
So
that. Okay, cool.
yeah, I mean, most of the files are all digital
Digital.
because the
Yeah.
printers just need those things, so I can provide them in the formats they need based on everything that we do. It's just,
And they think the
sky's the
lighting guy
limit,
did
and
that, but you did that.
yeah,
Right? That's cool. So have you done like dance floor wraps, like design
yep,
those for when they
yep.
that's cool. I love it. I love a good dance floor wrap. It makes a
I
huge
know it's
difference.
so much fun, and it can bring in a lot of color or texture or
Yeah.
design.
Without
Um,
being, I don't know. I love doing dance floor wraps. I think they're super
yeah,
cool. Like even the background of your wall right there, like that'd be a really cool dance floor wrap,
yes,
in my opinion.
yeah,
So I love
I would
it.
agree.
All right, what would you say is the number one thing people get when they or forget when they're doing their wedding signage wise? I mean, obviously you're not going to let them forget, but
Yeah. I mean, with signage, wayfinding is actually really important in an event. And it's not necessarily like a welcome sign, it's the flow of the event during the day
absolutely.
and giving people context of what's coming up next. I think is an area that kind of gets glossed over a little bit. So things like bar signage, bathroom signage, you know, a bit of a schedule, any of those kind of things. I love kind of building those out because we can add a lot to the design without everything feeling matchy, matchy, matchy. But it tells a more cohesive design story.
Right. No, I agree. I love when people do like all the little signage. I'm all for the little details, of course. So I agree on that. Okay, so let's talk about. I go back and forth about this, so I want to get your thoughts on it. So obviously, we're obviously moving toward even a more digital world than we live in, and the QR codes for the RSVPs. Do you do a lot of those, or what's your thoughts on this?
I don't.
Okay,
Um, I like them and I find them they are valuable. I just find on invitations it just doesn't have the same luxurious feel
of
as
course.
I mean, I most of my couples I'll just put a website on there, and if they are doing a kind of an invitation service, I'll just get them to buy a vanity URL, so it's just like their name and it looks nice, and then it'll redirect to an existing platform. just so that it looks a little more cohesive on the invite. Um, they're just, to me, it's a little more polished. Um,
No, I mean I agree. But it's the mail of obviously getting the RSVPs back. You know, that's
yeah,
not that fun.
it's it is a lot of fun. The challenge I find with mailing back RSVPs, it works when your guests are in the same country as you. But as I'm working with, more international clients, they're mailing invitations out to countries that, you know, are not their own country, and mailing it back means I have to have postage from that country, and I can't get postage from that country.
Ooh, yeah,
So so we're kind of like they get a digital RSVP and everyone else gets a printed RSVP. So you have to like find the right balance of those things, or does everyone get digital, or how do we do those things? 'Cause otherwise, the guest is responsible for paying for the
for
postage back, and that's kind of like, oh,
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And you want to make it as easy as possible for sure when they
yes,
get it. Obviously,
yes.
you don't want them to be like they're
What
more
are we
likely
supposed
to.
to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. They're more likely to put it in the mail if there's already the postage on it. So,
Yes, yes.
and we do see a lot of the QRs like that'll. I mean, I just
Hmm.
basically. I mean, like you said, you can obviously still put the website, and they can go to the website, but it's just like us lazy Americans, we can just take a picture of the QR code
I know.
and then we're there, you know. But then I always, get scared too. Like, what if that QR code like doesn't
Oh,
work?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I,
a lot of
as
testing goes into making sure those things are firing
right,
off and getting a few different people to test them and just make sure it's all showing up proper.
right. No, I agree for sure. Okay, how far should I know everybody has their thoughts on this, but how far should someone start planning for like invitations in advance? Obviously, before the wedding. When do you like to start working with clients?
9 to 12 months before
Okay,
is typical for me. I mean, longer the better,
right.
especially if we're doing something that's more complex or interesting because the production time is more thorough. But I mean, I've worked with couples, 3 months before an event and turning around something. It just, the
Everybody has
something
their own
changed or
timelines. Yeah, no, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah. Or they're like,
but
okay, we're gonna get married in 6 months, so you got to get on it,
yeah,
type thing. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think we're the same way too. Like some clients will come to us and we'll have a year and a half out to plan, which is amazing. We really can think everything through. We're not having to make any
Yes,
rush decisions. And then you have people that are like, oh, we're gonna get married in 4 months. And I'm like, okay, let's start today,
yeah.
like yesterday.
And so, yeah, yeah, I think that the challenge with some of those shorter term projects is the clients aren't necessarily aware of like rush fees because we can turn things around, but you have to factor in like, sure, I can print invitations in a week that are letterpress, except I have to rush the plates, rush the paper, rush shipping to you. Like, in
A
order
lot
to
of
turn
extra
things around on a
additional,
daily
yeah.
basis,
Yep.
you have to pay for that. And
No.
we could do it. It's just it isn't the bare minimum budget. It starts to get up a lot higher, and you're not necessarily paying for more premium products. You're just paying for things to get done quicker.
No. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and people have no idea like the process like behind. They're like, "Oh, just send it
Yeah.
to the printer and it's done." It's not it's not that easy.
I'm not a
Especially
paper mill, guys.
right, exactly. And like letterpress, they're like, "Oh, you got to make plates." I'm like, "Oh yeah, they got to make
Yeah.
all these things before they even get to the actual
Yeah.
paper itself." So, do you do a lot of things in-house?
No,
Okay.
not anymore.
I hear you.
Um, I have a very strong network of really high quality printers that I use. I do all the design work in house, and I do all of the handwork and assembly
Of course.
and finishing. That's some of my favorite parts. It's some of the most time consuming though, but like,
Yeah, I start
um,
yelling at the printers here when the ink goes out and it says it's jammed or all these things. I'm like, just get it for me.
yeah, yeah,
So I feel you on that part. That's yeah. I couldn't imagine like if you had all that in house and you were having to deal with just the technology side of when
yeah. I mean, I love it and I love doing it. I just found that for the scale and scope of some of my projects, I would literally be working 17, 18-hour days in order to accomplish it. Because one, like with our wedding season and with wedding season in general, like we get peaks of production and for invitations right now, I'm like, for me, for example, I'm starting to work on projects that are for 6 months from now in design and in production because they take 2 to 3 months
Takes
of production.
right,
So, and then all of that happens at the same time, and everyone gets married in the summer for the most part for me.
right,
And
exactly.
so everything crunches within a 4 month window. So everything, I just don't have time.
No, for sure. No, I agree. So when do you think invitations should be sent out? Especially, I mean, obviously earlier than normal if we're going international, but
Yeah. Yeah. Destination, I usually recommend 5 to 6 months out, depending, especially how much travel's involved.
right, absolutely.
Um, Invitations themselves, typically 3 to 4 months before.
Yep.
But that can change if you're doing save the dates. And save the dates, I typically recommend 9 months to 12 months out.
Yep.
Um, and then you have a shorter window with the invitation because people already know about it. But you do need to give enough time for those invites to be mailed, received,
And
and then
get
for them to
back.
RSVP. And then you meet all of your deadlines for meal selections and, you know,
No, absolutely. So when do you
transportation and all
normally
that
put
stuff.
an RSVP? Like let's say the wedding is I'm just going to throw out a random date, June 30th. What would your RSVP be on an invitation that you did?
I typically recommend like mid-May, mid to early May,
Yeah, agree. Okay.
um, because you need enough time to, like, in our case, I need to know the number of menus we're going to be doing. We're going to start escort
Yeah,
cards and
there's
place cards right away. And if we're doing a build out, I need to know the number of pieces to make sure that the size is the equivalent to hold that amount of stuff.
right. And I've had some people that are like, "Oh, we're gonna do 3 weeks." I'm like, "Oh my god, please don't!"
Oh
like,
no, don't do that.
yeah. I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. There's other things we have to do once we get that final count. like, there's at least
Yeah,
so many days
yeah.
until the wedding. So yeah,
I know your caterer is not going to be very happy with you if you're like, by the way, we're
no,
doing
because
60 piece.
you, as much as you can like say, "Oh, I really think 200 people are gonna be there," like, you don't know
No,
until you get them. So, and I've had from one extreme to the other. They're thinking 100 people and we end up with 250. And then they were thinking 75 and they end up with 30. Like it can
yeah.
go both ways. So, Noah, what's the most invitations you've ever sent out for an event or a
Oof.
wedding?
Uh, it was a lot of work. 400.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's,
it was exhausting. And I
yeah.
was just like working my way through licking envelopes and sealing them. And I was like, oh my God, like, did I make a dent in this today?
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Okay, so let's talk about, I guess we could call it trends or what you're really seeing right now for this year in production. And obviously, we're already working on 2025 weddings, maybe even some 2026 in there. Are you seeing any different trends, or what are you working with or seeing more of?
Uh, Color for me, and this is a more an easier one.
Okay,
Color has come in full swing. I mean, color's always been around, but I'm finding like really bright, saturated
cool.
colors
Okay, love it.
are really in, and they're really fun to kind of play with and mix and match. And I feel like Taylor Swift and Beyonce's influence has come in design a lot more. So I've got couples working with sparkle and holographic
Yes,
and,
yes.
disco elements
Right, I
in
love it.
their party side of their invites and day of pieces. So that's coming in a lot more, and I find that the conversation's coming from them and not necessarily us as vendors being like, this would be really cool. They're like, oh my God, I love this. And I'm like, okay, I can integrate that.
I love it. So did you do any cool Taylor Swift things this past year? I know you at least had to do one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did we did like an eras style
Eras, yep.
invite. So every
Okay.
piece kind of referenced
The
different
different
things without
colors
being
or the
super
theme.
literal.
Okay.
So there were just nods to it because the couple were Swifties,
I
and
love it.
their friends and family knew they were Swifties. So again, it wasn't like
Was it a
we're not
wedding?
gonna have snakes.
Or
Yes.
oh my gosh, okay, cool. That's fun.
Yeah.
We did
So
a Taylor
every
Swift
piece
party,
touched a
but
different.
yeah, the
Yeah.
whole
Is it
errors
one?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
My girls had to
It's
teach
fun.
me all about that. I didn't I'm not exactly a Swiftie, but I've learned all about it.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, it took the world by storm last year.
Oh my gosh, right? It's so crazy. Hopefully you'll get their wedding because they're gonna get engaged soon, right? I'm kidding. I don't
Hmm.
know. I love
Please.
it. Right? That would be amazing. Then you could just quit, right? No, I'm kidding. All right. What's the weirdest design you've ever had to request?
I had a request, and this is one of my more challenging projects. They wanted 3D animals
3D animals. Okay.
for their day of, and I had to figure out how to make these tessellated, like polygon animals. I had to go map them in 3D and then print them, and it was made up of like 150 sheets of paper all folded. It was kind of like origami. It was insane. It turned out really cool, but it was one of those things that I was just like needle scratch. I was like, I don't know how to like what.
Were they big animal lovers or veterinarians or what? What
Yeah,
was
one of
the
them was like studied. I don't even remember. It was very early on in my career. Um, they worked with animals. They weren't a vet, but they
okay?
were like a zoologist or something like. And
Mizzou.
so they
Okay.
wanted
Yeah.
every table was an animal, and so that's how they
Okay.
identified the table. So it was like zebra table, the panther table, the whatever table.
Was there an elephant
Um,
table?
yes,
Okay. I love
yeah,
elephants, but yeah, that's cool though. I mean, it
it
definitely
was fun, but it
took
was
you out
just
of your
yeah. I was like,
element.
I don't know what to do with this yet.
Oh my god, that's too funny, too funny. Okay, so let's go to the business side a little bit. So, when did you start offering like branding and website design? When did that come into play, or was that even before this?
Uh, so it was before it, but not in a good day. So that's the interesting
Okay,
part is
yeah,
like I come from an advertising background, um, and worked with a lot of really big agencies and really big clients on that side. Uh, and during the pandemic, I merged those two offerings. Um, my my partner had been nudging me for years, and I was very hesitant because I was like, well, I do weddings on as a good day, and Jordan does freelancing and
right,
websites and
yeah,
consumer research and that stuff on there for agencies. And they've been telling me, listen, like you should be doing this for your small business. Like you know them, you understand them.
of course,
And
yeah,
so I ended up merging it all in the pandemic, and putting both forward at the same time. And it's kind of been a big boon for the business, but also just like a lot of fun because I get to work with a planner on their website, and then I
and
get to
then
know
on
their
the
clients. So I get to work with
yeah,
them on both sides, or a photographer, or you know,
and
a
is it just
dressmaker.
wedding industry people or
No,
okay?
no.
It could
So
be
I
anybody.
work in all industries. I have a very extensive like auto experience background, clients like VW, Honda,
Okay,
Mercedes, like working on
cool.
their websites and some printed materials and stuff like that. To like consumer packaged goods. McDonald's was one of my clients at one point. Like it's all
That's
over the map.
cool. I love it. Okay, so how do you do all this? Because I majored in web design and I couldn't even keep up with my own. So, so like on your team, like how many peeps are behind the scenes with you?
On the advertising side, it scales between 5 and 15, depending on the nature of the work.
Right,
And then on the production side, I have I really have myself, an assistant, and then the team scales up depending on production
what
for
you're working on.
assembly and things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, makes sense. I mean, smaller production wedding versus a 500 production wedding. I get that. So, okay, cool. Okay, so a website is a client's first impression for seeing, obviously, whatever they're offering. Um, what do you look for in a good website when you visit one?
To me, it's important to get to know the people behind the work,
Right,
because that is ultimately what clients are buying off of. The end product is a piece, and price is a value, but sometimes the differentiators is, do we get along personally? Are aesthetics going to align? Any
right,
of those things. So I really look at the about section of a company, and I want to understand who I'm going to be working with or partnering with, or any of those things. I also think that from a transparency perspective, for people who offer custom services, an investment price point, starting point, is
right.
incredibly important
No, I agree
to
to that. Agree.
let people know what they're stepping into, because it's the worst to be like, oh my god, I love your work, and then their budget is very
XYZ. Yeah.
they're not able to invest the level of that quality of work, and you're like, well, this project was $10,000 and you have 300.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I do agree to that. And even a website that's just like user friendly. You know how many times I
Yes.
go to a website and I can't even find their phone number or email? I'm like,
Ugh.
it's the
Have an
worst.
alternate way of contact, like just put your email up there.
I know, right? Or
um
fill out this dang form. I was like, sometimes I don't want to fill out a form. I just need to pick up the phone and call you real quick.
yes. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm very much in agreement. Labeling is a huge issue on a lot of sites where people typically think for themselves and not in their client's feet
to
and
let
how they
somebody
use
else to
language. And so
navigate.
they may label things that are like a photographer, for example, could sometimes have a portfolio and a gallery. To me, those are the same thing. And so a couple would look for both of those kind of pieces and realize what's for one and what's for the other and why do I have duplicates, and it creates inefficiency. And so it's
Agreed.
important to think through streamlining it because you don't want to overwhelm with choice. You got to be really selective. The more things you put up there, the more likely they're going to get confused
Confused.
and drop
Yes.
off.
Exactly.
Um,
And go
and
to
so
the
you have
next
to
and go to
factor
the
all
next
those
person
pieces
on
in.
Google.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, for
of
sure.
course.
No, it's I love obviously because I majored in graphic and web design, just like looking at other people's website and like because everybody's mind is different of how they navigate. And we're actually about to launch our new website, so we'll send it to you and you can pick it apart.
Woo.
We're really scared to do it, but it's all good because we've had the same website for the past 13 years. So to do a whole new one, it's pretty scary, you know. So
Well, yeah, you're in a level of comfort at that point in time. You're just like, that's it. It's
right.
fine. It's working.
Exactly. Just even on the back end, I'm like, oh gosh, is everything linked right? You know, so
Oh, yeah.
so yeah. But no, it's definitely fun to look at other people's websites and just see how they, logistically they see things, and obviously contact is huge. I mean, most people go to a website to learn about you and then to contact you. You know, those are the two
Hmm.
things they really are there for. So very cool. So what do you build your websites in? For getting technical.
Oh, yeah. Right now, I have it in Squarespace,
Okay, cool.
but I've worked in WordPress, Wix,
All of
Show It.
them.
I've
Yeah,
done them all
right.
for my clients, and then there's like much larger platforms,
Of
depending on
course.
the scale of a client needs. Um, no more of the days of like hand coding websites in full
Oh
HTML
my
like they
God.
used to do.
Well, that's how I learned. I was like, I'm
I
never
know, me
going to
too.
make a website. Like, what?
I know.
It was crazy. Yeah. There was
Oh, yeah.
a project I'll never forget we did in school, and I had a race car. I come from a NASCAR racing family,
Yeah.
and we had to put it on the website, and we had to make the wheels turn and like the back coding for it. I'm like, this is way over my head, but it was
No,
cool though. So, but yeah. All right, so let's talk about other courses that you offer for wedding pros. Tell us a little bit about that.
I have a design fundamentals course that talks about kind of the foundations of design from a history and design style perspective. So really, kind of the idea is to build language within the community about art history and architecture and those kind of things, what to look for, and be able to have those conversations with clients. And
Right,
so I have an introductory course there. I have a mastermind that's about honing your creative voice and understanding how to position yourself and sell yourself in your market,
right,
and really develop your design kind of persona. And then I have an ideal client course where you kind of work through research and competitive audits and those things to help document and identify your ideal clients.
right.
And I'm launching a design resource to like subscription. It should be launching in early spring.
Okay, cool.
And that's a monthly list, like a monthly repository of books to read and photos, like references for designers to build decks off of, so that they have a lot of different references that are tagged to different design periods and styles. So if you're ever like, oh, I'm working on a green Art Deco wedding, they can come to my tool, look that up, and I can give them references that they can then use to to
Oh,
sell
cool.
that to clients.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Very cool. So how long have you been doing all these? You do it all. My goodness. Thought I
I
was
know.
busy. You're busy.
I started the education side about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And last year was the first launch of the courses. And then this year is going to be, full swing even more.
Right. I love it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I love being able to help people
Same.
and get to know their businesses. And
And take them to
sometimes they
another
don't have
level.
enough, like, they don't have the funds to be able to invest in me one-on-one, but they have a way to get into my brain.
Of
I mean,
course.
I've been advertising for 17 years. Like, I have a lot of failures and a lot of things that work that I can share.
Right. No, absolutely. And I love when people, obviously to be able to give their side and their experience and hopefully to be able to help them cut corners that, you had to experience as a fellow,
Yes.
things that, you've experienced. So, okay. So any stories that take the cake that you've experienced? I know there's got to be a good one.
I so that crazy forest wedding.
Right.
Um, I for their day of, I hand painted acrylic chargers. They're 12 inches by 12 inches, and
Wow.
it was the middle of the summer, and the acrylic paint was not drying on the back of the acrylic um, very easily, so I couldn't stack them, and then they started sticking to each other when we were packaging them up. So I had to get, um,
So were you
you
painting them on
know,
the top or underneath?
on the back,
On the back. Okay.
because they were smooth on top, so you put
Yeah.
your plate on
Put your
top.
plate on top. Okay.
But because of the temperature and the humidity, the acrylic was not curing properly, and I can't control that because it had nothing to absorb into, because the acrylic was paper. It typically absorbs into and reduces the
Yeah, of
moisture,
course. Yeah.
but acrylic is plastic, so there
It's
was
not
nothing for
nothing to
the
absorb.
moisture
Yeah.
to absorb into, so it took a lot longer to cure. But I didn't account for that in any of those things, and so that was a very logistical nightmare. So we had to get those. So when you rent dishes, they come in those really tall, like, stacks
Yep.
where the dishes are
Yeah.
separated.
Yep.
So I had to get bins that had those, so we could put all the acrylic charges in there so they could cure properly, but also not touch. But it was
Right.
just things that I didn't account for and timing. And I'm like, where do I get these things? Like, I'm not a rental company.
Right. Oh my gosh. But those are the ways that when you're a designer and things like that, you have to be creative and you have to
Yes.
take those challenges. And I love when I know people think I'm crazy, but when things go wrong at a wedding, I love to be able to figure it out, like
Well, that to me is some of the most fun on the like,
I
it's
know.
crazy and you're super stressed out, but you learn so much and you're like, never again, I'm doing it that way.
Right. We had a wedding, it's probably been a year or two ago, and one of the groomsmen didn't have the pink tie to match everybody else, but the
Oh no.
napkins were a pink satin. So we literally made a tie out of a napkin. And I mean, in photos, you couldn't tell. I mean, up
Yeah,
close,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
like, oh my God, that looks terrible. But it was all, but you just got to be creative sometimes.
Yeah.
And we were probably 45 minutes away from the closest, store that may have
Oh
had
my
one,
gosh. Yeah.
So. Um, so yeah, I love when not like crazy bad things go wrong, but things like that. So, okay, cool. Well, tell us where everybody can find you, whether that's website, social media, all those fun places.
Yeah. Our website is a good day inc.com. And on social, Instagram is the best, and that's also a good day inc.
Love it. Cool. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to This Takes the Cake. It was awesome having you and awesome learning more about you and some of the crazy things that you experience. So we love it.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been a lot of fun.
Of course. Of course.